John, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Congratulations on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Brad. Nice to see you, bud.
Nice to see you as well. You know what? Like recently, I feel like you're on one of these great runs. Obviously, you've done a lot of great work in your career, but going with Top Gun Maverick, you made my favorite Fletch book into a movie with Confess Fletch. And then, of course, what you did in Landman, and now with this show, it's like the 27 Yankees lately. It's just murderer's row of great projects. And I wanted to know kind of what's your barometer for selecting these shows, and this one in particular. Is it as simple as they always say? It just starts with the script.
Pretty much. And first of all, thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say. And thank you very much for singling out Fletch. I really did love working on that project. Yeah, kind of. You just sort of, you have your inner barometer or thermometer or whatever measures things like that, and you just kind of hope that it works and that it's true. I'll take the 27 Yankees comparison because other people have said, "Hey, you're the male Nicole Kidman," which I'll take that too, honestly. But I've been working lots. It's great. I've been doing great stuff, things that I've really enjoyed. You mentioned Landman, working with guys like Taylor Sheridan and Noah Hawley, just really wonderful folks. And that's a big part of choosing the projects. On this project, I got to work with Jonathan Tropper, whose writing I've really loved over the years, and Amanda Peet, who I've known forever, Olivia Munn, who I've also known socially for a long time, and you assemble this great group, and then you put it all together, and you push it off to sea, and you hope that people respond to it, and people have been, which is great. And in fact, Apple picked it up for a second season, which is really great. So we're going to get to make some more.
Yeah, congrats on that. And I see why they want to pick it up for a second season. This show does the writing is so proficient. Just striking that tone between obviously the dramatic moments and then having the humor in there, what Coop is able to bring to the screen. I just really enjoy your portrayal of him. And that was a question I was going to have is just when you look through, a pilot script or a series of scripts, do you try to look for a launch pad line, as I've heard it described, or a scene where you read it and go, oh, this is who this guy is. I know exactly who Coop is going to be. Or is that something you find throughout the process?
I don't necessarily look for that. However, in this project, in fact, there was very much the first scene of the show is kind of spectacular in that sense. And Jonathan wrote a wonderful pilot script, a wonderful first episode, and it really sets off the story in a positive direction, in a really compelling way. I think both for me as an actor, but also for me as just an audience member, it was a really fun thing to read, and I think a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, and it says it in the show, but it really does just show you that life is these interconnected choices and things that happen to you, and you can really understand what Coop is going through and why he makes the decision that he's going to make. And he really does seem like a fun character to play too.
To play and hopefully to watch. Honestly, it is, watching people make decisions that you kind of question can be a fun thing because it's not you that's happening to. So that's often the vicarious thrill of watching somebody behave badly is often quite fun.
Well, John, the show's great. I really appreciate you taking the time. The 27 Yankees, we'll run with it, or the male Nicole Kidman. I hope we get more Fletch films down the road, but I'm glad we're getting a second season of this.
Thank you kindly.
Greg Gilmore, ESPN Radio, CW39 in Houston. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed this show.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I want to pick up though with the tone of this show. I just think is phenomenal, and I know as a writer and creator, sometimes nailing down a tone can be a difficult challenge because there are very dramatic parts of this show, but then there's a lot of humor, especially with Coop. You enjoy kind of the way that he handles himself. How hard was it to balance that tone when you were kind of going through the writing and creation process?
Well, the tone was everything to me. Before I was in TV, I wrote novels, and it's much easier to set a tone in a novel because you control the narrative the whole way through. You control every word of it. But to me, the trick here was if we made this a straight drama, I don't think it would have had the same impact. We would have had to get much more procedural about how he's breaking into houses and what the police are doing, and we would have had to waste a lot of time making it believable. And if we made it a straight comedy, I don't think there would be emotional investment in the character. So to me, it was about emotionally investing in the characters, never taking the world quite that seriously, but taking the characters in it very seriously, and getting that down on the page. Once it's on the page, then the challenge is the director creating a visual language that really works. And that's why we went after Craig Gillespie, who's so good at that. Craig shooting the first two episodes really set a visual tone that matched what was on the page, that gave you the permission to laugh and the permission to cry, and it gave us as writers permission to really go in any direction in any scene. And the third part was to cast actors who can dance between comedy and drama. And that's why Hamm was so important. Olivia Munn, Amanda Peet, these are actors who are equally comfortable in comedy and drama, and that becomes really important for the show.
And yeah, you're right. They all do a really great job of making sure you hit the comedy, but also serve those dramatic moments. And another one who I was blown away by is Corbin Burnson, who's obviously always been great in everything that he does, but especially nailing this character in particular. He was really good.
No, we were so excited to get him. I didn't even think it was possible. And we looked at who was around in that age bracket, and as soon as I saw him, I'm like, can we get him? And he was such a pleasure, and also just great having him on set. He's such a pleasure to work with. But yeah, he was great in the show.
He was really great in the show. Where did, like, I guess going from the soup to nuts, from the moment of inspiration for this particular show, what was that moment of inspiration where you thought, wow, this is something that I could really adapt for television?
I've been thinking about it for so long that I don't remember the exact moment. I thought at first I was going to write it as a novel. I couldn't get around to writing it as a novel. And I lived in a town like this in that area for about 15 years. So I knew all the stories, and I knew the people, and I knew sort of the value system of the neighborhood. And then the idea of somebody in desperation starting to rob from his friends and neighbors is something I don't remember the exact moment that idea came to me, but it never went away. A lot of ideas come to you every day, and I don't write them down. I figure the good ones will stay, and that one stayed, and ultimately it just became something I knew I wanted to do, but I only wanted to do it if I could do it a certain way. So before I even wrote it, I approached Jon Hamm and said, hey, this is the idea. Do you think you'd be interested in doing this with me? Because I needed someone who I really believed could carry it. And once he came on board, that's when I wrote the pilot and went to Apple with it.
Well, the show's phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. So congratulations on it. And great talking to you today.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Brad Gilmore, ESPN Radio, CW39 Houston. Eunice Hoon, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. Congratulations on the show.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Look, what I loved most about this show when I was watching through it was the tone that it strikes. It does such a masterful job of balancing the humor where it's needed and also addressing the dramatic elements of the show. As actors and actresses, that has to be a fun line to be able to play, but I would also think it's challenging at times as well. I just kind of wanted you all to, your opinion on having to walk that fine line of the balance of the tone. Eunice, if we could start with you.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is just in the script. Our writers are masters, and they already bring such a great blend of the dramatic and the comedic, but, oftentimes, like with a chocolate chip cookie, you put a little salt on there and that tastes sweeter. Same goes for, like, when you're in a very dark and intense scene, a little bit of comedy is going to contrast that so much greater. But it's also true to life. We always find humor in the darkest times. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So I think it's really so reflective of how we really function in the world, not just some TV universe. And when you have a script as good as this, it makes it really easy. And there was so much warmth and embrace of us as humans, as actors. So there was a lot of allowance for, experimenting in those tones and changing things up. And there was a lot of comfort and safety in that, which was really cool.
Also,
would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's also very easy when you're thinking about how a show balances its own tone. It's easy to just sort of look at the actors in front of you and kind of assume they're doing all of the work, but we have a massive crew of people that are all there to help calibrate from the initial writing, as Eunice was saying, to the director on set who's creating the proper environment to try to capture certain energy, to Chris Arruda and his post team, helping with the edits and trying to goose things to just the right pitch in order to elicit a particular emotion, all of the editing that the showrunner and everyone else does as they go through that whole process. So knowing that you can trust these people gives you a lot of freedom on the day when you can just try to put forth your best effort in the delivery of the lines. But it's very much a large village of people that work to try to hone something to a razor edge.
And the cast that is put together, obviously the two of you included, and Jon and Corbin and everybody, Amanda, Olivia, everyone who's involved with this, it just seems like the rhythm and the pacing of the show felt so kinetic the entire time. Is that something that came alive during rehearsals, or is that, again, in the script, it felt that kinetic energy, Eunice?
I think there was, well, first of all, we're dealing with a whole cast of masters at their craft, people who are so adept, like with a real depth of experience in both dramatic and comedic work. So when you have this, firecracker writing, it's really hard not to get swept up in the rhythm and the pace of it all, especially when you have people who understand comedy, which is so much about timing, and being able to get through it in the way that because they're so good at what they do, they just know. And of course, again, we have these incredible directors that are guiding us in what energy we need to capture for that moment. And I think all that together has really brought some really cool kinetic moments in the show.
Well, they give me the time cue, but I really appreciate the both of you for joining me today, and I had a great time talking to you. Congratulations on the show.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.